From the lowest to the highest, from the furthest to the nearest, from the smallest of the smallest to the greatest of the greatest, yoga is about all of life, everything we do, all of existence. My name's James Bogue. Welcome to the Whole Life Yoga Podcast.
Yeah, so it's great to see you, Bill. So today I'm with my friend Acharn Whorton, US Marine captain, who was my colleague when I was a teacher at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. And the very first day when I was working at the university, my office was situated not very far from Bill's, and he invited me into his office, sat me down, and I would say, Bill, it was one of the most beautiful mentoring experiences of my life. You gave me a distilled, efficient pep talk of a certain, or initiatory talk about how to make sure that I didn't mess things up in this very conservative, royal family linked institution with many gifted and brilliant faculty who were from a particular backgrounds in Thai society, and how I should also feel free to really enjoy the opportunity to work with these amazing students and bring my own creativity to the classroom. And that day, you also pointed out to me, Bill, on your wall in the office, a particular photograph. And not long thereafter, we started talking a little bit more about the Bhagavad Gītā. So anyway, Bill, you've been an important part of my yoga journey. That's more than 20 years ago, that day when I came into your office. So it's great to see you today. And in these 20 years, you've been working pretty much non-stop on a translation of the Bhagavad Gītā with our mutual friend and great teacher, Acharn Tassanee, who also at Chulalongkorn University is one of the faculty there, and was your first Sanskrit teacher and also mine, thanks in part to you. So yeah, I'm very pleased to be talking to you today. And one thing that's happened recently, your translation has now been published. Your Acharn Tassanee's translation, it's available now. I have received the copy.
24 years.
Yeah.
24 years of working together on it.
Yeah. So I've got quite a few things I'd like to ask you, Bill. And I think I'd start with, what drew you to the Gītā initially?
Well, what drew me to the Gītā initially was war. I spent 21 months in infantry combat in Vietnam, and at the end of my second tour in Vietnam, I was an infantry platoon commander for U.S. Marine Corps infantry platoon commander for 10 months. And then I was a senior battalion advisor to a South Vietnamese Army infantry battalion for 11 months. And we did a lot of fighting along the DMZ, the demilitarized zone and things like that. Anyway, the combat that I underwent was very, Vietnam was a bloodbath. For the infantry, Vietnam was a bloodbath. Actually, the U.S. Marine Corps took more casualties in the Vietnam War than they took in fighting Japan during World War II. That fact is not usually known, but it was a bloodbath. But anyway, at the end of my second tour in Vietnam, I realized that I was mentally, spiritually in a state of real disintegration, that I was sick, and that I could not continue my military service any further. I could not continue I was a captain with a regular commission in the United States Marine Corps, and I knew that I had to resign my commission in the Marine Corps, and I decided that I would go study philosophy to try to repair my mind. So that's the state of my mind when I met the Gītā in 1972. I resigned my commission in 1969, and then I studied with Dr. Kashinath Upadhyaya in 1972. I took his course, Early Buddhism in the Bhagavad Gītā. And that's what introduced me to the Gītā. And of course, that's all about war. And it really got me interested. And so I decided when I came back in the Marine Corps to resume my life in the military in January 1975, my mentor, Dr. Kashinath Upadhyaya, who I'd taken 7 courses from in Indian philosophy by that time, and we were very good friends, very close friends. And he told me that one day I would meet a master and that I would translate the Bhagavad Gītā with that master. And then all of a sudden, when I became 58 years old, I realized time is running out and I wanted to do it. And so that's when I decided it's time for me to have a nice long conversation with Acharn Tassanee, Sanskṛt. So in the short version, that's the short version right there.
Yeah. And when you did have that conversation with Acharn Tassanee, Sanskṛt, what happened then?
Well, what happened was I gave her my complete background. I didn't pull any punches with her. I told her that I'd been a professional killer, that I killed people for a living because I'd shot a lot of people, and that I was, frankly speaking, I was pretty highly decorated. I was awarded the Silver Star for shooting a number of people one afternoon on top of a hill 492 and along the DMZ. And I'd spent a lot of time in combat, and I described some of the instances that I'd gone through. And I said, in the old days, I was not a very nice person, quite brutal, because you have to be. If you're going to succeed in war, you're not a nice person, not really. So, but I decided, I told her that I gave her a long look at my background, so there'd be no surprises there. And then I told her it was time for me I wanted to go through the Gītā with her because I wanted to absolutely clear all my soul of every trace of attachment to the Vietnam War. In the 6 years I studied philosophy at university, I got through, I'd become, I guess you call it normal. I still, but there were still remnants. So the thing of it is what I wanted to do is I wanted to extinguish all remnants of my attachment to the Vietnam War through the Gītā, through working with her. So after 24 years of working with her, I can tell you it's all gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's all finished.
Yeah.
And it's all completed. There is no attachment left.
Mm-hmm. It's, as you say this, Bill, there's several things that strike me. And one is, you mentioned a long time back, you were aware that your mind was in a state of disintegration. And then by the time you came to study with Acharn Tassanee, you were aware you needed to repair your soul.
Right.
And you used those 2 different ways of describing it. So did something happen along the way in your earlier studies of philosophy? And when you came to meet Acharn Tassanee, how were you sure that this was the master you'd been kind of preparing to work with? Or did you have that sense?
I had that sense, absolutely. But the thing of it is see, I knew her. Yeah. I knew her by reputation. Acharn Tassanee has a reputation at Chulalongkorn University for being a great scholar, but also it's her character. Yes. People see her as very, very much into she's a sage.
Yes.
She's a very, very wise person.
Yeah.
And so this is someone that I wanted to mentor me spiritually, scholastically, intellectually, morally, all those things. I wanted to get into the transcendental. There are three basic aspects of this in the Bhagavad Gītā: the transcendental, the moral, and the secular, the worldly. And it's the relationship of those three that is very, very, very important. Now, when I left the Marine Corps in 1969, I knew I was sick. I was really, really sick, but I wasn't sick in the way a lot of people thought I would be sick from the war. I was sick because I knew I was evil, because I loved war. I loved it. I loved that 21 months in combat. I didn't hate it. I loved it. I loved leading men in combat. I loved it. But I knew that that's not the way I was raised. That's not good. It's evil. And I was in an evil war. And I knew that if I continued, see, I was very successful in my 21 months in Vietnam. I had been awarded the Silver Star. I was awarded the Bronze Star. I was awarded the Purple Heart. I had great fitness reports. I was all set to, for a good military career. And I gave it all up because I knew that I was sick. And if I continued, I would be going along the route of self-destruction. I knew what awaited me was suicide, alcoholism, drug abuse, rage issues, anger issues, marrying the wrong person, and all the millions of ways that people self-destruct. Mm-hmm. And I did not want to self-destruct. That's not the way you're supposed to live your life.
Yeah.
I did not want to self-destruct. And I felt philosophy would be, for me, the way that I would repair my mind. And while I was at university, I met 7 great teachers in Chinese philosophy, Indian philosophy, Western philosophy, and educational philosophy. And I got my bachelor's degree and 2 master's degrees in philosophy. But these 7 great teachers, there were 7 of them, and they put me through a philosophical boot camp because they knew I was there to repair my mind.
Yeah.
I was not there to become a philosopher or teach philosophy or anything like that. They knew why I was there.
Yeah.
And they knew at the end of that period that I was going to go back in the military because I'm a professional soldier. I love military life. I love the Army. I love the Marine Corps. I love the military way of life. But I was not going to perform that life as someone who was sick and somebody who was on the road of self-destruction. Fortunately, I was allowed to go back in the military. The Marine Corps took me back as a staff sergeant. And I was very grateful to the Marine Corps for doing that, because in January 1975, when I came back on active duty in the Marine Corps, the Vietnam War had already been lost. And at that point, all the military services were conducting what is called a reduction in force, which meant that thousands and thousands of officers and NCOs and enlisted people were getting kicked out of the military. And I wanted to come back in. Mm-hmm. Well, I was lucky. The Marine Corps, they took me back as a staff sergeant. And I'm very, very grateful to the Marine Corps for doing that to me. So anyway, the issue is at the end of 6 years, no more self-destruction. Mm-hmm. I wasn't completely cleared, but no more self-destruction. That part was over.
This is very striking to me, Bill, because you mentioned you were aware that you were sick and that you were in a state of disintegration. And to me, this is where yoga begins. And in the Bhagavad Gītā, first chapter, we
see despair. Prince Arjuna, despair. I was Prince Arjuna. I was Prince Arjuna. I never had any problem understanding Prince Arjuna. I was Prince Arjuna.
But also very significantly, Bill, you had the courage or the honesty to recognize that if you continued on that previous path, you would self-destruct. And so
I knew I would.
Yeah. And so while we recognize our own blind spots, we have enough perception to recognize if I continue on this path and deny the evil, as you put it, within myself, then it's just going to lead to my own deeper sufferings. It's going to take me to hell.
Mhm.
And so face the ego crushing reality that I have been sowing seeds for my own misery, and I've not been conducting myself or not been expressing myself in the world in keeping with my deeper intuitions or my deeper longings. But it seems like you had the courage, what I would describe as the spirit of the kshatriya, the one who's actually looking to protect the well-being of the whole field, this beautiful aspect of the warrior perception or the warrior archetype, that was very strong in you. So despite other tendencies that may have been around you, you had the presence and the determination to say, no, I'm not going to continue on this path to hell. I'm going to work with what is and what's available to me and shift the direction of my life.
Well, one thing I would like to point out to you and anybody else that's looking at this is I had experienced many veterans of World War II in Korea, and I had seen how they had self-destructed in all these horrible kinds of ways: suicide, alcoholism, rage, anger issues, millions of ways to self-destruct, James, millions of ways. And I discern it's just not practical. It's not a practical thing to self-destruct. I mean, that's not a very practical thing to do.
Yeah.
Not with your own life. I mean, that is not a very practical thing to do. So, I mean, people were shocked when I resigned my commission because people knew that I'd just been awarded, the Silver Star, which not very many people get. Bronze Star, Purple Heart. I had great fitness reports. I mean, even my own mother the kind of language she used on me, I wouldn't repeat here, but it was a lot of people, and I just know I am not going to self-destruct. That is not a practical way to live your life. It's not practical. And I knew that when you self-destruct, I wouldn't have finished my career in the Marine Corps. Somewhere along the line, I would have self-destructed, and I wouldn't have been able to finish. That's not being successful, either in a secular way or a moral way or a transcendental way. It's not being successful at all.
Yeah.
So it's practical.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it, the transcendental and morality is a very practical thing to investigate.
Yes.
It's a very practical thing to do.
Yeah. No, this is I'm right now. I'm teaching a course on the Yoga Sutra over 7 months, and we just got to the stage where Patanjali, who sets out the Yoga Sutra, introduces these principles called yama, which are basically ethical principles. The type of how do we want to channel our energy as a human being for the sake of deeper harmony. And some commentators point out this is the most pragmatic way to live. If you want to enjoy life and you want to become free of your conditionings and of your limiting ideas, then the more you can cultivate harmony within and around, the easier it will be for you to actually save a life, learn the most, and free yourself from limitations. But without a clear, solid ethical foundation, things are going to get so messed up so quickly, it's not going to be even accessible to live practically in a way that's really towards one's own evolution.
Exactly. And this is what Lord Krishna, in book 2, he just starts laughing,
Yes.
at Prince Arjuna, because he just starts laughing at him, because here you are living only at the secular level. This is limiting. It's a very, very limited way of looking at things. No. We have to go deeper.
So striking, Bill. So for you, the way you read the Gītā, part of the yoga, part of the joining or the unifying or the connecting is the integration of what you describe as the secular, the spiritual, and the transcendental, or the...
I combine 3 elements, basically. There's the secular world that we live in, and we all have to live in it. But there's the moral world, and we have to... Morality is a very, very important thing to consider. But there is the transcendental. There is within us. We are the universe. We are part of this, the universe, and we are one.
Yes.
We are one with the universe. And we are part of this realm of unity. For me, I agree with the idea there is only one religion in the world. And everything else is just simply some kind of sect or cult or something like that. There's only one religion, and that is extinguishment of the ego and becoming one with the universe that we are all born into and part of.
When I hear you say this, Bill, you transmit with tremendous authority, clarity, conviction, this idea that we are one with the universe. And I imagine maybe for some people who haven't had the same type of extreme encounters with life and death that you've had, are there particular experiences or instances that you've known that brought you
here,
to this?
Let me tell you just basically a story. When I was a young platoon commander in Vietnam, it was early in my tour, and we were outside. We were doing some fighting outside some villages outside of Da Nang, and toward evening, I decided to walk outside my lines a little bit. And it was towards sunset, and I walked out, and then all of a sudden I was assaulted by this awful, awful, awful smell. And there's only one smell that's like that, and that's a dead human being. And I thought, okay, I'd better go over. Is it a Marine, or is it Vietnamese, or who is it, kind of thing. So I walked over there, and I took a look, and it was a young Vietnamese, and he'd been basically cut in two by a machine gunner that was really, really good at his trade, because he'd been cut almost in half by a machine gun. And all the insides were outside. The insides were outside, all the intestines and everything. And I watched a group of ants marching in a kind of a military formation over the viscera. And I looked down at that, and I saw my own death. And then when I saw my own death, I saw myself down there just dead. And then all of a sudden I started laughing. I thought it was really funny, because I'd had all these dreams of glory and medals, and I'm going to be a hero, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And oh God, when Johnny comes marching home again, and all that kind of stuff. And oh God, I'm on my way. And then I realized it was all bullshit. It was all nonsense. It was just all nonsense. And I just started laughing. And then all of a sudden I went into a position of quiet, and things just got more quiet and quiet in my mind. And then I went all the way down to no concepts, no words. No words came. It was a place of perfect calmness. And I stayed there for a while. Then all of a sudden, my radio man called me and Lieutenant. So I had to get back to duty again. But it was a very interesting experience. And I had a number of those kinds of experiences. And I had other experiences along the way that showed me that there is definitely something more than what we have with our senses.
Yeah. Well,
Definitely
this reminds me.
something more.
Go on, Bill.
Yeah. Go on. No, go ahead, please.
Well, just the photograph I mentioned when I first came into your office at Chulalongkorn. And I remember you telling me that Marine is there. There in the sense of he is one with that. He's beyond thought. And maybe you could just say a little bit more about this type of experience. I mean, for example, in many of the yoga texts, they talk about when the enemy is at the gate, when one is running for one's life, when one sees the beloved after a long absence. These are the types of experience that can give a person a glimpse into that, into the underlying consciousness or the underlying energy or intelligence of life. And my own experiences of what I would call samadhi in activity, when a person is fully immersed in whatever we're doing with a sense of purpose for whatever reason, that we can experience these moments of timelessness. We go beyond.
Another case that came to mind is this. Another time when I was platoon commander, my company commander came running across a rice paddy, and I'd heard a whole bunch of shooting down south from me. A whole bunch of shooting down there, and my company commander came out, started running at me, and he said, "You've got to get down there." And one of our platoons had just been ambushed by a large group of Viet Cong, and they were getting cut up real bad. And he says, "You've got to get them. You've got to help them." You know, kind of. And so I yelled at my platoon, get all the ammunition you can, carry all the ammunition you can, and start. And I just started running. And the whole platoon just picked up and started running, and we started organizing as we were running along the way. And then part of where we had to run through is we had to run through a village. And then I looked outside the village. There's a bunch of farmers out there just calmly, farming and everything. And they were running. And then we started running from the village across the rice paddy. And then I stopped. And then in the stopping, something just told me, they're all around you. They're all around you. You are surrounded. And then I stopped the platoon, got him back to the edge of the village, and got set up in a position. But I still had to send out a squad across the rice paddy to get in position so they could support us by fire and stuff like that. And as soon as I did that, bullets just started appearing around those Marines walking across that rice paddy. And we were just getting shot at from all kinds of different areas. I got behind a rice paddy dike, and I had dirt kicked to my face 4 times when I kind of looked over the top to see what was going on. And I mean, but we put up a wall of fire that was incredible. But why did I stop? The voice, they're all around you. They're all around you. And if we'd have run out in that rice paddy, every one of us would have been killed. Every one of us, because we were completely surrounded. They'd have had us all. That happened to me a number of times. Mm-hmm. I learned to trust my spontaneous intuition. To me, spontaneous intuition is not mystical. It is very, very concrete. Mm-hmm. It has always been concrete for me.
Yeah. I wonder, Bill, like sometimes I feel like yoga in terms of connecting is to disconnect from all of the veiling influences that get in the way of our connection to that deeper intuitive knowing that is pulsating with the intelligence of life itself. And it seems to me like some people, because of not necessarily military extreme battlefield experiences, but all sorts of different life experiences people can have. Some people, their connection to this, I sometimes call it the voice, the pilot of conscience that's guiding us in a way that's really in keeping with our own deeper rhythm. I think we all have a rhythm, you know. Sometimes children get lied to by teachers saying that they cannot sing or they cannot dance or they have no rhythm. The child's there with a beating heart, for goodness sake. We all have a rhythm. Everything in life is pulsating and cycling. And all of life has an intelligence to live and to grow and to evolve and to pass on and all of the rest of it. And for me, I feel like some human beings, by grace or whatever you want to call it, stay in touch with this deep intuitive wisdom and they maintain their confidence in it. But often in society, we're exposed to many influences that interfere with that connection and almost teach us to not trust that, because if we do, then we'll be ostracized or we won't fit in. But some people are fortunate to maintain it. And I would suggest that the teaching of yoga, one of the main ideas, is to actually rehabilitate the connection to that deep intelligence that is at one with the intelligence of the cosmos, one might say. And it seems to me, Bill, listening to you, is that all through your life, you've had regular or enough, let's say, significant moments to reaffirm your faith, you might use that word, your confidence that there is an intelligence that you are part of, that is much bigger than the individual Bill that you're identified with, but which nonetheless is still you, is still part of you at the deepest level. And so this integration of these different layers of human experience that the Gītā invites us to integrate is a path that you've been walking faithfully in your own way, in your own unique way, which is what yoga invites each of us to do all these years.
I think that that's a beautiful way of putting it, because first of all, I love the way you use the word veil. Everything is a veil. It's a hiding. It's a covering over. It's a covering over of reality. The battlefield of life, just like the battlefield that I fought on in Vietnam, the battlefield is objective. It's all objective. Your subjectivity is objective. It is part of that reality. We're in that reality. The battlefield for life, we are all on the battlefield for life. But that battlefield is objective, and our subjectivity is part of that objectivity, is the way I see it. Mm-hmm. And the way that you can reduce those veils, the veils that cover over are the veils of what other people think. They're veils of customs, traditions, and everything else. These are all veils. We have to see through the veil. What is the true self? What is the true subjectivity, which is objectivity itself? Does that, I don't know whether that makes, but I love the word veil, because veil is what's hidden, what is undisclosed.
Yeah.
The object is to have the undisclosed disclose itself to you. Mm-hmm. Let the battlefield tell you. When I ran with my platoon through that village, and all of a sudden I ran outside that village, and all of a sudden, no, they're here. They're all around you. That objectivity disclosed itself to me. And by doing that, I saved the life of my entire platoon and my own, because we'd all been killed.
So you were able to hear the truth.
Yes.
Yes.
It was like in that immediate I mean, there wasn't mystical voices speaking or anything like that. It was just an absolute, total, spontaneous intuition. They're here and they're all around you. You're surrounded.
Yeah. It's interesting, Bill, when you mention about that which is always present but veiled.
It's that.
Yeah.
It's veiled. But the thing of it is like we veil it ourselves by our own self-destruction.
Yeah.
We're always veiling things because of our own self-destruction, because of what other people say, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And no, we have to train ourselves. And I love the way you say it, that you're training people to reconnect with their true self, which is the objective reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's objective.
It's interesting as well, like in the Gītā, the teacher is Krishna, which literally means black or dark, that which is obscure, but which nonetheless is present. Also, the way I understand it, Karshati as a verb, that which draws everything towards it. It is the black hole at the center of the universe. And it's that desire to recognize. So from what you just said, Bill, it seems to me like the Gītā just fits so beautifully onto this. It's like the life with all of its ups, downs, comings, goings, expansions, contractions is the perfect opportunity that invites us, if we're courageous enough or can muster the presence, to pull back the veils one by one, so we can have this revelation or this recognition, this remembering of that which we've come from, that which we've emerged from, that without which we wouldn't be able to exist at all, which is our conscious essence.
Right.
And which also unifies us with everything else that we share, this experience of unveiling and discovering, or becoming more veiled and enmeshed, everything that we're part of it with.
But the key to understand this also is it's not based in emotion. Mm-hmm. There's no emotion to this at all. There is no, we're not talking about emotion here. I think a lot of people get confused, as I once was confused by faith, and you helped me out so much, James. I really appreciate your help on this. It's not emotion. There's no emotion to this. It's just simply the recognition of what is. What is the case?
Mm-hmm.
What is? That's all.
Yeah.
And there it is. And it's not based in some kind of emotion and good feeling and all this other kind of stuff. No, it's just what is. That's it. It's that. I love the Upanishads, especially the Upanishads are always say that. Yes. They don't call it anything, just that.
Yes.
It's just that. I like that.
And so
there's no feeling to that.
Could I ask you, Bill, if I ask you today, when was your first visceral experience of that?
I think it happened when I was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
I've had these moments all throughout my life.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, even when I got married, I think I told you the story. I was going to study Chinese with my Chinese teacher, and I walked into his company, or the company he was working at, and I saw this Chinese lady, obviously Chinese lady, and she had the liveliest, most intelligent eyes I'd ever seen in my life. And in that moment, I looked at her and I said, I'm going to marry this woman. This is the woman I'm going to marry. In that moment.
Yeah.
Now, and I got to tell you this, James. At that time, I was 35 years old. I was in Bangkok. I was single. I was having one heck of a good time. You know, I won't go into the details, but well, anyway, let's just say I was having a very, very good time in and I didn't want to get married. Getting married was the last thing on my plate at that time. But I took one look, and that's the woman I'm going to marry. And now it's 45 years later, and I am so much in love with that beautiful woman that I married. It's just incredible.
Thank you for sharing that, Bill. You know, I know when I was also teaching at the university, so many of the students were moved by the way that you would share about your relationship and how supportive and how wonderful that connection is, and how it's been this wonderful gift all these years.
Well, I tell you what, my wife did not share my feelings at all. I mean, I think I told it. I've always told the story about how one of the things I had to do to marry my beautiful wife was I had to spend 3 years learning her dialect of Chinese and pass her language examination before she'd marry me. And she didn't think I'd do it, but I did it. You know, but anyway, I finally persuaded her, and it's just been wonderful, just wonderful, a wonderful life. And she's been such a wonderful person to live with. So there we go. But the intuitions have always, like I say, when I was in combat, the intuitions saved my life, and those of my Marines. My life was not so important, but that of my Marines was, and they saved my Marines' life. In my married life, it's the same way. It's just there. So that's all I can say.
Yeah. So for you, Bill, the marrying or the integrating of the transcendental with the moral or the ethical and the secular this is a text, this is a teaching that you have been practicing all these years. Yeah. So we could describe you as
philosophy for me is practicing.
Yes.
You practice.
This is the Indian way.
You know, this is so different from academic and scholarship, because for me, and I'm not critical of either academics or scholars. I'm not critical at all, but it's a different realm. Mm-hmm. My belief is that when you're going to do philosophy, you live it. Philosophy is something that you live and you do, and you practice. And the thing of it is I'm still so far down on the road. I'm still too much attached to my ego, but I understand what the problem is. I understand my own problem, and I'll work to the best I can, as long as I can, to improve. Yeah. Do better. Yeah. That's what I'll try to do. No, I mean, because I'm not there. I've got a long ways to go. I'm a student. Yeah. I always define myself as I am a student. I am not a scholar. I am the recipient of the great scholarship of many other people. For example, like our teacher, Acharn Tassanee, and also Dr. Kashinath Upadhyaya. I'm the recipient of great scholarship. I'm not a scholar, I'm a student. Yeah. But I've been able to incorporate my life with my studies to be a student. Yeah. And that's what I am.
No, I would just say, Bill, that's what it means to practice or study yoga. You know, right. In the Indic tradition, to study is to practice, and to practice is to study. They go together.
They go together.
You mentioned Acharn Tassanee and her reputation and her presence. And
Well, it's her presence. Yeah, her presence is incredible. Yeah.
And the presence is, she is emanating what she has installed in the very fibre of her being through her own life,
Right.
the way she lives. So she lives the teach. She's like, she is a living, she's a student as well. Like this, she brings that constant spirit of inquiry to her scholarship. And, you know, I was just felt what an amazing gift to be able to start studying Sanskrit with a teacher like her.
Oh, she's incredible.
Yeah.
And I still see her. I'll be seeing her next Wednesday also.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll be seeing her.
And another question I wanted to ask, Bill, is now it's more than 20 years that you've been working with Acharn Tassanee and studying,
24 years, actually. Yeah,
24 years.
years.
Studying and practicing the Gītā and having produced a beautiful, very particular and valuable translation, I would say. How has your relationship with the text and its teachings developed over the period of this great
Well, one of the things is I love it more and more and more. As a matter of fact, we're going to be doing the Bhagavad Gītā all over again.
Yes.
We're going to start and do it all over again. We're going to spend the rest of our lives doing the Gītā together, along with your good friend Clint Ellie.
Yes.
Edelhoff, you know. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, you know, doing this.
Why is it, Bill, that if it's possible to put into words, why do you think, because I feel the same about the Bhagavad Gītā, like Yoga Sutra I'm teaching now, and I've been working with the sutra for 20 years, and every time I do it, it's like, it just reveals more. But are there any particular things that you think give it this quality that every time we look into it, it just reveals more? What is it about these texts that rewards the return visit, that rewards the continued exploration, that rewards the practice of the text rather than just cursory reading?
I would say this, James, is there something inside of our souls that recognizes a transcendental spirit and quality that we know that we'll never get enough of. There's something inside the text that calls us, and calls us and calls us, and we have to respond to that call. And we're never going to get enough. We're never going to get full. We're always going to be on the road for more, because the call will never cease. The call will always be there. The Bhagavad Gītā is a call. We will always respond to it. I don't know whether that makes sense or not, but that's beautiful. The way I think.
It resonates with me. Yeah. You know,
yeah, that's the way I feel.
I think it's a beautiful note to end on, Bill.
Yeah.
Today. Yeah.
And we'll be back at this again.
I would love that. Yeah. I mean,
just do it again.
For me, one way I describe the Gītā, you know, Gītā meaning song, and one way we can understand Bhagavan totality, until we come to actually experience that totality, that wholeness, that completion, the call is always there.
The call is there.
We can ignore it. We can distract ourselves with other things, but really we're always aiming for what we really want to aim for is always there. And if we want to, it's available.
It's always there. And the thing of it is as long as I breathe, I will be following the call. I will always be a student. I will always be following the call.
I think that's a beautiful invitation to us all, Bill. I can't think of a better way to work with this opportunity of life.
You take good care now, my friend.
Thank you very much, Bill. I look
take
forward
good
to
care.
speaking again
Bye-bye.
soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. Until we meet again.